Welcome to the latest episode of the Uncharted Territory podcast with myself and Sam. Today we're joined by Jamie, who's founder of Lava Lamp, a good friend of mine, and we have many fascinating conversations about the state of the world and crypto, Web3, blockchain, the potential and the pitfalls. So just thought it'd be really interesting to have just an open conversation about some of the things that you and I often delve into over coffee and cake, and bring the conversation to the Uncharted Territory podcast. So good to have you here.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, welcome, Jamie. Yeah, it's good. I always love to get more perspectives, Dan. That's what we're all about, is looking at other perspectives. What can we add to our knowledge? What might we agree on? What might we differ on? And really always try and build as big a picture as we can. And because, I think you said it before in the chat we had before on air, Jamie, you're endlessly curious, as are me and Dan. So let's just go on that journey and see what comes up.
Yeah. I mean, we've been connected now, Jay, since the lockdown phase.
Almost 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, well, it feels like a long time with all that crazy period that got in between. But if it hadn't been for that period of time, we wouldn't have connected. Jay supported our Elevate Live project, which we ran during the course of the first lockdown, which led to the birth of Elevate today. And over the time, we've both become increasingly interested in these new types of technology. And, obviously Sam and I started this show to explore the potential for transforming financial landscape and how the external world is changing things. And, many of the things that we talk about is into that space.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about why you're interested.
Why I'm interested in this space. Well, naturally being a bit of a techie, anything that fuses finances with technology, I kind of seem to gravitate towards it. I stumbled into cryptocurrency a while ago, having no idea that there was a parallel between crypto and blockchain. Everybody seems to hear the word crypto and make radical assumptions based on the words of others, but nobody really understands the underlying asset itself, the technology, the ecosystem that falls underneath crypto. So after just spending a little bit of time investing some basic attention into it, I realized that actually this asset itself is a lot bigger than what anybody else tended to tell me. And then out of curiosity, I just dove down the rabbit hole, and it got deeper and deeper, and it got more and more exciting. And now I feel like I'm at a point that every single social or political issue that I stumble upon or other people talk about, there it seems to be a quite convenient little solution that is provided by the world of blockchain. So yes, as well as the finances and the adoption of crypto as an asset class, I also really like to look at how it can provide solutions for multiple social and economic issues.
Yes.
I'm so glad you said that, Jay, because it's that's what we're so big on, is trying to demystify and get beneath just those words that trigger people. Like you said, people just hear crypto and they have no idea the scale of the baseline tech that's underneath that, its use cases, its potentials. And I think that's why it's great to have you on as well. With you've dived obviously more into the technical side of things, more of a techie. I certainly don't view myself as a techie, although I'm really fascinated by the whole space. And I think it is so important to get beyond those, the opinions people have without understanding the baseline tech and the possibilities in it, Jay. So that's why I think this conversation is so important and so useful.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, for yourself, you've got so far into the tech that you actually programmed your own coin.
Yeah. I have. It's relatively easy once you understand the tech to create anything. So as well as the world of crypto and blockchain, there's a nice parallel with the creator economy as well.
Mm.
So the second that you dive into this world, anybody can be a creator of any form and monetize their content directly and do that without any counterparty risk.
Mm.
So, if we look at anything that's remotely centralized, you bring in an element of counterparty risk,
Mm-hmm.
you bring in an element of greed, corruption, and all of these things can quite easily be removed when you bring in a peer-to-peer system.
Yeah.
So, I can't remember where I was going with that. But
how does that work then? So how do you mitigate against those major risks?
Well, when you can apply anything to a distributed ledger,
Mm-hmm.
which the blockchain is, you can choose who you interact with, how you interact with them. You can purchase off of them directly. You can sign any kind of contract between two parties directly with full end-to-end transparency. So once you got your head around the basics, all you need to do is apply a little bit of basic programming knowledge, and you can go from setting up your own smart contracts to setting up your own tokens, your own NFTs, whatever you want. And that's truly exciting. We've never had an asset class like this before. We've never had a technology like this before. And if you consider that the internet has got democratic values caked into it, and I've been watching a few of your prior conversations, and I noticed that decentralization seems to be a buzzword. But if we consider that the internet has decentralized information from its inception, information is power. The power used to be held in a very isolated environment in libraries for scholars, for example. And now with the internet, we can learn just about everything we want. So for me, this ecosystem just raises that just a little bit more, and as well as just education, we can look at distributed governance, distributed voting, peer-to-peer payments, and it mitigates any centralized thing.
Dominance. Yeah. So I agree with you. I think here's where I get stuck, and it'd be interesting to unroll this a little bit, is that you're right. The excitement, I'm 40 years old this year, the excitement around whatever you call it, Web 0, Web 1. I wasn't born during the earliest iterations of the web, but I'm definitely of an era of social media's prevalence and growth from nothing to something. And then we've seen that decentralized state become quite centralized through the dominant tech players like Google, and how they liberate information, but they also have a degree of control over what you see, what information, what sources, increasingly so now in terms of search results. And the same with the major social platforms, the kind of control of information, the flow of information, what's misinformation, what's disinformation. So we've seen this like vast, open, decentralized space become centralized. And I could see the possibility already of Web3 going down that same track.
It's such an important point, Dan. And yeah, everything you said, Jamie, is really important, because you're highlighting that the tech can be used, with the right intent by the right people for really great decentralized solutions, solving all those and a myriad of issues, as you've alluded to. And really, like the comparison internet, one we talk about a lot, is really important. But as you said there, Dan, YouTube, what I kind of view as the golden years of YouTube, sort of 2010 to 2016, where literally you could find anything, proliferate. It's a completely different beast now. So although, like you said, the Library of Alexandria might be there, can you get to where you want to go on it? And that's come with not overnight, total in tiptoe. And obviously, people who are not so aware of that control the agendas probably do feel it's the same as it was. But for us who are endlessly curious, who were finding information we could find years ago that now we can't find, are aware of that shift. So that is equally my fear. And I suppose the big question, and where we're in uncharted territory, is Web3 has so many solutions and the power to decentralize and have all the positive effects you've touched on there, Jay. How are the control structure going to try and mitigate that, control that? That's what's going to be really interesting to watch and see how it plays out. And I think we're on the brink of this sort of switch over, and being curious of how much they're going to let it, organically grow and be decentralized, and how much they're going to try and clamp it down. And really, that's why it's interesting from a technical point of view, and particularly with your more tech background, how much you think they can or can't do that, even if they've got the will to. So I think there's so many interesting things you've both touched on there for this conversation.
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts on this in terms of regulation, how much intervention centralized authority can actually have going forward. And I think you've got to fundamentally ask, what is the need of intervention in a trustless system? So when everything boils down to, you might have heard the expression "code is law" before, but when you break down what code actually is, it's incredibly binary. You've only got ones and zeros, which equate to truths or falses. There's no in between. There's no subjectivity. So when you've got a system that is wired up by smart contracts, and if the smart contracts have got total transparency end to end, and they are fully automated, so for example, upon certain parameters being met, the contract will self-execute. What is the need for centralized authority? So I'm not saying that there's going to be no need for large central players in the future, but I certainly see, as this tech continues to be adopted, that their role in society just slowly dwindling down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I would say, is a utopian perspective. I could see that possibility, the technology offering that possibility, but those trustless peer-to-peer transactions also then have the potential to take away all of that central mechanism. It's a solution to that intermediary problem where we pay fees and we've got like the inefficiencies of the market. But in those inefficiencies and in the kind of technical nature of the payment structures and financial systems is a great deal of profit.
Yes.
And so you've got these financial and legal centers who are quite clearly threatened by this new technology. So whilst I agree with the possibility, part of me goes, well, they ain't going to take it easy. They ain't going to, they're not going to let that be rolled steamrolled.
Of course not.
Yeah.
No.
And, you look at, for example, I think it's either this week or the coming week. I only know this because as of today, Bitcoin is trading at $5,000 less than it normally does on Binance, because Binance are removing a lot of their fiat off ramps, which means that you can't liquidate certain funds in certain regions as easy as you previously could have. So, yes, regulation will come in, but I see regulation coming in more because they are threatened that a technology exists now which trumps any of their current offerings or future offerings, 10 to 1. The CBDCs, for example, undoubtedly will be built into some form of blockchain technology. As you mentioned in the previous podcast, then it comes down to the choice of the individual of what they want to adopt. And centralized governance is not a bad thing for many people. They might actually prefer to have a centralized, slightly more monitored system in place that looks after them. But the fundamental thing here being there is another system that exists. It provides solutions to many of these issues. Are they perfect? No, but they are better.
Yeah.
And as these conversations continue to happen, we just see more and more people flock to these systems rather than the current systems, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but you can't chase perfection because it doesn't actually exist.
That's right.
Perfection is utopian.
Yes. Yes.
Once you've got something, there's always going to be something else. So I think all everybody within this industry is trying to say is, hey, look over here, this isn't an improvement.
Yeah.
And this is why it works.
Yes.
This is an invitation to engage with the space.
Yes. What's curious, and Sam, I think we've touched on this before, is that you're absolutely right. It is a leap forward, yet despite all of the problems we talk about in the legacy systems and the centralized systems, it's almost for some people like us, we've jumped on it and gone, right, we can see the possibilities here and we want to help shape that and be part of it. But for other people who have the same fears around or same concerns around the legacy systems, it's almost they're gripping on more tightly to what they already know. They're clinging on to the old fiat system and the old financial system, potentially out of fear. At that point, you mentioned that there will be some people who do prefer that centralized structure because it gives them that sense of safety that they've come to know. Whereas, the sovereign aspect, as we talked about, with in recent episodes, talking about the need to take full control of your assets. There's responsibility that comes with that, and it's the trade-off between freedom and responsibility that we're playing with this new asset class. But for a lot of people, that represents a huge amount of vulnerability that they're not used to tolerating.
Absolutely, and perhaps the extra need and curiosity to get clued up and to explore it and to embrace them, the technologies, whereas the majority in our experience get corralled into the simpler solution. And that's why as I've always said, within blockchain you've got the two ends of the spectrum existing. You've got that open source, decentralized blockchain, all the solutions you're talking about there, Jay. You've also got the closed walled garden, private blockchains, distributed ledger systems, which the CBDCs will be built on. So it's really, for me, a question of how much is the decentralized allowed to flourish, will flourish? Does it become a niche underground, rebel, black market? Does it run side by side? I think there are really interesting things going on in the sort of legislation space across the world, that different countries taking different views. We just had the MiCA regulations being published in Europe. I saw something really interesting in Indonesia. They're reminding tourists that they're criminalizing payments in crypto. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So a lot of tourists are going to Bali and want to pay in crypto, and there are a few businesses accepting crypto, like bookings or even cafes down for your coffee. They're reminding people there's prison sentences for that they don't want. They've got very strict currency laws. That if you don't trade in the Indonesian rupiah, that's a crime. So again, legislation coming in to try and control that. So it's really interesting to see how that's going to play out. But what's really interesting is on the flip side of that, Indonesia, at the same time as they're saying no cryptocurrency payments, and going down hard on either the people spending it or the business offering that service, they're equally in the middle of building their own crypto exchange nationally. Mm. And this is where I kind of feel that things they want them to go, which is not people not transacting in these as currencies, but this being a digital asset space that they're going to regulate, try and control, try and eat up as much of the pie as they can, bring in a lot more controls, lock a lot of smaller players out, because they don't want people transacting directly outside CBDCs. That's my thesis. So I don't think that means it's a ban on crypto or a crack to crypto, but it's more that it becomes an asset space. But if you want to transact day to day, mostly what they want you to be doing is coming back into their currency. Always actually doing transaction. So that's where it's really interesting that, they don't want, obviously, people with their own wallets privately that aren't KYC'd, transacting peer-to-peer outside their system of control. So these are the kind of questions that I have in mind, how that's going to play out. And like you said, Jay, does that take a lot of people getting educated and really embracing these technologies? Like we've talked about, Dan, there are great decentralized, blockchain-based things, even on the web browsers or search engines. But how many people will actually go and look in that and work that out and embrace that technology? And how many people will just be corralled into what's easiest? And like you said, Jay, you opened with, just be scared by the idea of crypto, not want to know, and they'll be delivered, blockchain technology, but in a way that literally blocks and chains them. Whereas we know the antithesis exists, but it takes effort and learning and curiosity. So those are the two sides of the coin that I think exist. And I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how they play out. And when we look at, what's happened in decentralized finance, exactly what you're talking about, Jay, trustless contracts, whatever. But Wall Street did go after people like Celsius, a lot of these platforms, destroyed them and then bought them up. Yes. So I often have the vision that they want to get tech people bring solutions, but they want to use all their tricks, whether it's regulation, whether it's destruction financially, to then buy it up and try and control it. We also, there's so many facets to this, we're seeing regulation, don't want people to do their own staking on crack in the US because they want the banks to have that kind of, but so I think it will go mainstream, but in a very different iteration. And how much does that really decentralized, permissionless, non-KYC, privacy-based stuff, where does that fit in? Will that be pockets? Will that be for the tech-savvy people? I've got loads of questions there. I've said a lot, but those are my kind of thoughts on what you both said there.
Do you want to pick up from there?
Well, there's a lot to digest. So I think number one, the point you made about it's always there, and inevitably there might be a centralized approach versus a decentralized approach. You can boil that down to basic living habits like healthy eating and going to the gym. It's always been there. It's always
choices,
choices in life. In terms of the almost demystification of the word decentralization, because it gets thrown around a lot. Just to really break down what the actual blockchain is, it's just a decentralized network of nodes, and anybody, the three of us, we can set up our own nodes. So the blockchain itself stores a copy of everything to every single node in real time, 24/7, round the clock. It has done that very successfully since Bitcoin's inception. So you can't regulate and shut down a decentralized network.
Yeah.
The only solution, funny enough, we talked about that last time we saw each other. The only solution to shutting down a decentralized network is turning the power off. And if they turn the power off, the people that are going to succeed at life are the ones that are eating well and going to the gym.
Exactly. That's why I always say that. We get asked that. Obviously, I get asked that a lot, Jay, and I'm the same thing. For me, the power grid, and the internet they run on it is all about their control structure. So if they pull that, then it is a whole different ballgame. And I don't think that suits the powers that be anyway. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So centralized players are always going to exist within this network. Now, I agree there will probably be these currencies, these blockchain-based currencies in the future that are adopted in society so that you can, for example, the British pound, whatever, let's go for it. But the blockchain-based British pound, and that is the British pound that you'll be able to use to transact with, WH Smiths and buy your food and shopping at Tesco or whatever you want to do. If or on the flip, everyone might just start taking ETH or Bitcoin. So if you look in the world of tech right now, you yourself, Sam, you can do it. We can all sign up for a vendor account through Binance and Coinbase. And what that allows us to do is set up a basic e-commerce store where you, sell a service or a product, and then we can already start taking crypto payments. So that's option one. You've got the mainstream adoption of crypto payments, and we're in the tech world already. So in e-commerce, it exists there. But if you set up a new website, you require hosting. All of the hosting providers are now taking crypto payments. So you can already see the world of tech adopting it. So the next thing is the mainstream adoption and how they're going to do that. No one knows. Quite simply, no one knows. They might try and heavily enforce a centralized currency, and that will work great for a certain percentage of the population. That's fine, but hasn't that always existed? COVID. You get the jab, I get the jab. You don't get the jab, I don't get the jab. Like these are all choices. So I think it just all boils down to the same thing. We need to strive to create as much education, as much granular education as possible, whilst making it as easy to digest as possible. At the same time, we need to leave the choice to individuals.
Absolutely, yeah.
Quite honestly, Sam, you mentioned DeFi, decentralized finance. If you can't explain it to your mum, it's not worth doing. So the user experience needs to be increased. Before you can even start to have those conversations.
Yes.
So you mentioned institutions rolling into the space, dumping certain assets. Well, JP Morgan executed a huge transaction on one of the largest, Aave, which is almost the bank of DeFi. They actually executed it on the Polygon blockchain, which is Ethereum's #1 scaling solution. So you've got a bank executing a huge transaction on a layer 2 Ethereum scaler. Meanwhile, in the mainstream media, they're cracking down on crypto criminals.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad you brought up Aave there, Jay, because, a lot, with all the FTX collapse, and we discuss it down, I think it's an inside job, and it's all about drama and creating fear and, giving a certain picture. But through all those dramas, Aave, properly decentralized DeFi, absolutely fine, no issues, because of its, the way it's built and its actual. So I'm glad you brought it up, Jay, because it's, it is a bastion of showing what's possible and how different that is from the centralized system.
I agree with that. Now, I also fully agree with the piece around choice. The last few years, at the heart of what I've campaigned for is that choice in whatever regard. We've had these like strong mandates coming over us and these impositions from government to citizens. And there are people like us who appreciate our independence and sovereignty and can still have responsibility for people beyond ourselves. And we can still have an interest in the communities we live in. And often, actually, the people I've met over the last few years who have been very, perceived to be individualistic are perhaps some of the most caring, socially orientated people I know. Yet governments take this more paternalistic, they almost take this paternalistic view over society, that they are the parents of society and therefore they need to impose rules and regulations just to protect people from themselves. And it's like, as a parent, I'm always dancing with that. At a weekend, we were out with Zach, and he's like, he loves climbing on all these different things. There was these park benches he was climbing on them, and he's really good at it. And this like part of me's like hovering as his parent to like make sure he doesn't fall off. And like the other part of me like, he's got to learn. And this weekend he fell off the bench like and bashed his head. Like, he's fine. And that's the point, he's fine. But actually, like right next to where his head landed is this giant concrete slab. And if his head had landed on that would have been a different story. So it's like, okay, as a parent, I'm like, I want to give you enough freedom to live your life, but I also want to ensure your safety. And it's almost like the institutions, the central institutions, and we could all, there's plenty of disagreement around whether there's a discussion around what agendas are at play and, if it's a parental style of governance. But in general, if you look at the kind of political science around governments, there is a sense of that paternalistic, we'll look after you type thing. And that's where, like that for people who want that sovereign individual responsibility and will take it with the responsibility it comes with, are often overridden by that kind of more, particularly under the culture we live in right now. So whilst I agree with you again that the technology itself can't be turned off and it's like it can exist independently of governments, the moment it intersects with above the ground society, like through transactions as Sam was talking about, or any other mode where it actually comes into contact to quote unquote real life, that's where I think the threat is, like for things to be regulated. So
well, totally. Well, I want to just say, we actually agree on the choice thing, and we do have the choices, and the choices I took, and imagine you probably took in 2020. I did take them, and I did get chased by the police. Around London streets for taking those choices to meet up with one person or 3 people or go for a walk at a certain time. So that's the issue, I suppose. I agree with you. The choice will be there to navigate towards that decentralized and really embrace that. It's more a question of how much is that going to be really gone after. How much is the state really going to try and come after that? I suppose that's the real question. I'm totally there. The choices are there, and we want to take proactive choices, and we will. And it's just looking at the reality of, and again, we're up for those challenges because we believe in truth and integrity and freedom and sovereignty. So, but it's how I think what's interesting is how much choice will be there within the legal framework of the powers that be, if you see what I mean. I don't think it's going to be left to be, here's 2 systems, guys. Absolutely, you go there and you go there, and that's your choice. We know that's our choice. The top-down structure says, no, this is where you go. This is what you got to do. If you don't do that, then we're going to pursue you at some level or try and sanction. As we looked at, you want to pay for goods in Bali with crypto, and they're threatening prison sentences. So that's the reality, and how that's going to play out is going to be really interesting. And the other aspect is, you talked about it there, Jay. It's so important. Education. What the masses certainly aren't getting, or even a lot of people in the wake community aren't getting informed, good information. It's hard to find to get a big picture to make informed consent. So absolutely, if they really had informed consent, then they probably would make more choices towards decentralization and more person-centered freedom. but they don't even know what choices they're making, do they? Often. So there's so many things to unpack there. But yeah, I think I'm with you that education is key so that people can make, informed choices.
It's almost comical how certain countries are clamping down, like you just mentioned, Indonesia and in Bali, whereas other countries are adopting various blockchain assets as a reserve currency.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I had a friend who went to El Salvador to Bitcoin Beach, where he was based in Sweden and went out there. And then when what's interesting, we've had this flip flop, and we had all the stories of China banning Bitcoin miners, in the past, and now very much at the moment the present news is, they've come out with a paper on Web3 and allowing retail to get involved in. I think they've got a list of 13 cryptos to allow retail. So again, this different stuff going on across the world, and the states really cramping down, other parts of the world opening up potentially. So it's an ever shifting landscape.
It's an adoption curve.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think, at the beginning stage of any technological adoption cycle, you get like the first movers who take the risks on new technology. Look at the early. I mean, we're still at a very early stage of adoption, even though it's increasing rapidly. But we're way beyond the initial inception, the early days of Bitcoin. But that's why we have these flexibilities right now. We still can make transactions, and the kind of practical use cases that we would love to see are now available to us. They really are, and growing. But as that adoption curve moves towards mass adoption, that's when that it's almost like I can imagine like vultures circling over this. And again, I don't want to be too black and white around regulation, because in a way we've talked about it before. Giving people peace of mind, making it more secure to transact, and easier to transact, is of course a desirable feature, and some would argue that regulation will do that, but at the cost of some of the benefits is the concern. And I suppose I take a more practical view of thinking about how do you marry the two? Like how do you create a more decentralized, equitable system that also offers kind of security, and then overlaid across all of that is the kind of traditional structures that we're used to. And again, I'm not saying positive or negatively, but like tax structures and VAT and all of those things that at the moment, if you can transact freely and there's no specific way for the government to reach in and take what they deem to be their share, it's again, that's another trigger for governments.
Yeah, and obviously they're using in all the legislation to talk, as they always do, it's all about targeting terrorists and and criminals, whatever. But in 2020, 3 people going for a walk were enemies of the state, terrorists at some level in the state's eyes. So that's the issue, isn't it? So yes, you could argue from a fair point of view, they want to control to stop, money laundering for certain activities, but that can easily shift into any, over involvement with the state on judging whatever they want. Misinformation has become online harm, all this kind of stuff. So it's always, we talked about who's the judge of what freedom should be allowed and what needs to be controlled for our own safety. And I think that's what's really, really challenging to see how it plays out. And obviously, it's all there, like the travel rule. Already I was reading the micro regulations this morning, talking about, and obviously huge regulation coming in on transactions over €1,000 of digital assets. They want to know, info on either side of the transaction, who's involved, what they are, for money laundering, for criminal activity. So all this stuff's coming in. There's so much going on. I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. And I wanted to ask you, Joe, what's your view of, particularly in Web3, the internet, of how quickly that's shifting at the moment, and how quickly that will shift, and what you see coming, and just any thoughts on that, as somebody who's sort of more in tune with the Web3 space.
You mentioned about creating a currency. So yes, the lava lamp token exists on the Matic blockchain, but it has no use case, and that's fine. At some point in the future, I'll inject a certain amount of liquidity into it, and you'll be able to trade it. But that's not the point of it. So the reason it's there is as an open token. it's purely educational. So let's take something as simple as, when you go in a coffee shop
Yeah.
and you have your loyalty card and you have your stamps. Well, I would hope nobody would ever fall to the level of trying to fraudulently create a stamp to get an extra coffee. But the same principle applies across everything, from politics to voting to governance. It's all the same thing fundamentally. It's each of us having our say and then trusting in a system that it will do the best thing for us. So if I say, okay, I'm going to open up a coffee shop and I'm going to have a loyalty program, each time that you purchase a coffee, you can walk away with your coffee and 1 token. And once you've collected 5 tokens, you can have a free coffee and you can vote at the direction that we take the coffee shop in the near future. Really simple, just really boiling it down. And then to authenticate that, there is a transparent blockchain where you can verify every single step, and you can verify that certain wallets are attached to a certain token. And it's as simple as that. I don't think we need to complicate it any more than that, because the second we start complicating it more than that, we start bringing in a lot of fear, and people start leaning away from it.
Yeah.
Whereas if we really scratch off the surface and just go to first principles, basic fundamentals, distributed ledger, total transparency with a tokenized peer-to-peer system, what can that do for the world? So I've got my lava token and my coffee shop, but then you look at the local election, and then you look at the way that companies transact between country to country, and you just find that actually, okay, well, like I said, this isn't a perfect solution, but this certainly brings a lot more transparency, which minimizes the need for trust.
Yeah.
So trust is the one thing that creates a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, and a lot of anxiety. And I don't know how many times they have to do it, but centralized figures always boil down to the one thing: humans. There's always a group of people at the top making decisions for everybody else based on what they think is right, So that means that everybody else underneath them has to put their trust into them. Or maybe they're having an off day. Maybe they had an argument the day before. Who knows what's going on? But these are still humans making very basic decisions for the world. So maybe we don't need to leave some of these decisions to them to make. Maybe we can remove some of that decision making, stick it on a transparent blockchain, and allow people to make the decisions themselves. You can call that utopian, but it's also very realistic. And I would prefer to, as an individual, in the world of crypto, we talk about one of the main things about Bitcoin as an asset class is its scarce, there's a finite supply of it. The one thing that's only finite is the amount of time that we have. We're born, we live, we experience, and we die. So I would prefer to spend my time here investing into positives rather than negatives. And everything that I've learned and I can see in this system is a positive replacement of the current system that we have in place. So I'm going to shift my energy and my focus to focusing on this system, and politely, whenever the centralized authorities or whenever the governments are trying to make moves that I don't agree with, I'm just not going to give them my attention, because that's the only thing I can do. I can choose to, a lot of people talk about the data monopoly that comes with Facebook, but then I just won't use Facebook. If I don't like it, I'm not going to It's as simple as that. And I think after a certain amount of time, more people, as they get pushed and pushed and pushed, there will be a tipping point where they just think, meh, I'll just go over there because that works better.
I love what you said, Jay, because it's about moving forward regardless. I often hear people, the what if arguments, what if that. But if that stops you moving forward, then you're not creating solutions and you're not, accentuating the positive stuff that is out there, supporting it, being creative. Because I always say this, they can't control creativity. They want you to feel like it's futile and pointless. So although with brands, I do see loads of it, and I see loads of ways they're going to try and control. Doesn't mean, like you said, that I don't want to move forward anyway, because that's important. Because if we all stop moving forward and don't put energy there, I love your ethos in it, and I think that's critical. Regardless of what steps they make, we're still going to be moving forward and trying and navigate. And we don't know how it's going to play out. I think people, understandably, from a fearful point of view, want certainty. I would say it doesn't exist. We don't know how it's going to play out. But rather than say, well, I don't know it's play out, so I'm not going to play, I'm still going to play and move forward and embrace the unknown, because you want to move towards better stuff. So, I think I know we're in tune there. That's why we're in this conversation. But I think it's a really important point to, like we said, be vigilant about the other side, but be focused where your energy is on creating stuff, because they cannot shut down creativity. They want you to not bother. And, and most people are getting corralled or not being informed. If you are informed, you're aware as you are, and you've got a really good technical understanding, or whatever, then that's great, because you're adding so much value, and can help others from being on your path, and you moving forward will help others understand those systems. And particularly what you said there about making it explainable and getting clarity is so important, because people often, my experience of talking to people is they don't even know what paths exist. So some of the stuff you talked about, people just wouldn't be aware that even exists. So rather than say they haven't chosen it, they don't know it exists to choose. Exactly. And I think that's where these conversations are really important. So thanks for sharing that ethos, because it really resonated with me.
Do you remember when we first met? One of the first things I said to you was, "What happened to you?" like, there seems to be a make or break moment where you go to school, life's hunky dory, you get your job, and something happens. It might be a breakup, a relationship. You might lose someone you care about. You might be in an accident. Don't know, but something happens, and inevitably, life happens to all of us. And when it happens, it prompts us to taking that step back and actually asking those questions, like, oh, do I need somebody looking over my shoulder all the time, or do I want to do this, or maybe that's not right for me, and that's up to the individual. And that's fine. That's always been fine. That's always the way it has been. That's always the way it will be. That's just the nature of the system, the life, But the more and more I think about it, the main thing being choice. So I'm half Dutch. I've just spent a week in Holland with my partner, and my mum's family, who lives down in the south, little town called Sittard. Beautiful little city, but very, very opposite to what the stereotypical Dutch movement's going to be all about. And everybody looks at Amsterdam and makes certain assumptions. But I think, when you observe the culture and you look at the one thing that creates such a peaceful way of life, and the Dutch as a society, they are very peaceful and they're very happy. And the reason for that is that they're not micromanaged by their government. Certain practices, like the legalization of certain substances, they leave it alone. They let it, they let the individual police it for themselves. They let the individual regulate it. They don't have any more fast food stores than we do here, yet the individuals, the society can self-regulate. Just because this substance is freely available, it comes down to the individual if they want to use it or not. And when you actually go to Holland, you see that all the people that are walking around completely blazed off their faces are the tourists, and all the people that are chilling and just really happy are the Dutch, and they're never smoking. So it's an interesting social study. And when you really think about it, it's just choice. Just like when the government backs off and just lets people make choices for themselves, I think most people just want to get by and have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation's raised a number of important thoughts for me. Is that, in a way, I've allowed my skepticism that's arisen not only through the last couple of years, but I suppose more broadly throughout my life. And maybe it's a symbol of me becoming an adult and because the term I used earlier, utopian, is a loaded term. But what I'm realizing is that the future's yet to be created, and it's important that at a time like this we don't allow an ideal to be quashed before it's even begun because of our skepticism. And I find myself
Yes.
into that space a lot, you know, and that when we have conversations, I'm always like, yeah, but playing devil's advocate, if you will, being a realist. 10 years ago, I wasn't that guy. I was like, yes, let's do this. And I still have that in me. But actually, I think there needs to be more of that right now, of actually, no, this is possible. This is possibility thinking. Yeah, okay, these things could happen. We still need to be mindful. But it's actually being aware of that and saying, well, okay, well, if that's going to happen, then what's the best case that we can pursue in order to actually move it forward? Because you referenced it several times in this conversation. There are many things that are better now as a result of what's emerging. And that should be celebrated, but it's, as we've touched upon, it's at the beginning stage of an adoption cycle. So the best is yet to come, really. And it's important now that actually, I think particularly those of us who have been active really heavily within the kind of COVID story don't become disillusioned by what we've witnessed and start to see that actually that possibility thinking, that more idealistic thinking, okay, we still have to bring realism to it and practical pragmatism, but not at the expense of thinking in an ideal term, because that's the opportunity that's available to us.
No, and the image that comes to mind as you speak there, Dan, is like, you know, knowing that if we stay present and we don't know what the path ahead, that we go over the hurdles as they appear, rather than sit here and go, there are too many hurdles. Like I'm just looking down the track. There's just so many. I'm not going to start. There's no point. You know, and that can be paralyzing. That takes you out of your power.
Yeah.
And exactly. If you go on that path, which, you know, you're clearly on, Joe, your project is amazing. Yeah, the hurdles will pop up at times, but you're in motion. You know, you want to, and I always say when you get in motion, it's far easier to adjust. And I mean, it's simply easier to jump over a hurdle when you're running rather than it is from a standing start. Okay. If we just stand at the start and just think, you know, and I think I agree with you, Dan, it can be very, with our awareness and a lot of we research, almost see too many what we can perceive as insurmountable hurdles, but they're not actually right in front of us now. Therefore, if they appear, we'll deal with them one at a time, step by step. So I think it is really important to bring that energy to it. So, yeah, I'm in agreement.
Is that the only way to live? Just step by step?
Yeah. But I think to say what to go back, Jay, what you said, what after Dan is like, I think what you see is people have crossed certain Rubicon where you've let go of an idea of security, you know, that you have embraced the insecurity of life and that you're not looking for certainty. And that's freeing you to go on the journey. Because I see people who want certainty and they're often in fear because they want to go, what if, and it's sort of like, yeah, all of those. And who knows? Whereas once you've embraced certainty, then you're not attached to an outcome and you can go on that more organic journey and because you're going on it regardless of what ifs come up. You know, we talked about down there, some people was going to have an apocalyptic view and almost not taking any action because, well, you know, this scenario might play out, but it may well not play out.
Yeah.
You know, it's not worth not going on the path because of that. You know, that's life is here to be lived. So, you know, I think that's the ethos we like to bring to all these topics, and it's universal, isn't it?
Indeed. You were going to say something?
I can't remember. Thoughts already.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry about the noise there. So I was clattering away because the light is swinging around. You can see this lovely bright light above Jay's head. So I was trying to close the blinds.
He's been illuminated. He made that important part about empowerment and illumination.
Yeah, it's elevated the conversation. Cool. This has been fascinating. I know we're close to time. So I want to say thanks to Jamie for being with us. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do with Lava Lamp and tell people where they can go to find out more about what you've got going on.
Okay, so let me just stress there is no product to be purchased right now. I'm very much in the infancy of setting this platform up, but it is going to be a grassroots course for anybody that's interested in looking into this space as an asset class, touching on basic macroeconomics to diving into binaries and what a binary system is and why it underpins everything we're talking about and the positives that can come with a binary system. These are conversations, these are very, almost first principles philosophical conversations that aren't even touched within the industry. The second that you take to YouTube or Google. With crypto, you just are spammed by a million.
Bitcoin's crashed. Yeah.
It's about to do this.
Yes.
But
the underlying message is, how on earth can you have conviction in anything you're doing in life if you don't understand what it is?
Yeah.
So,
how can you navigate when you don't know where you are?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to understand what it is, let's dive into subjects like, binaries and the basic macroeconomics that underpin this. So I've created a 2-part course with a decentralized token that's attached to it as a basic use case. So if anybody's interested, it's lavalampco.org. Please don't buy anything because it's not ready. But yeah, that's where we're going.
Cool. Well, great to have you on here, Jamie, with us. And Sam, any closing questions or thoughts or reflections?
Yeah, just my thought was, I always see these two, the yin and yang within it, because I totally agree with Joe that this, trustless system where we can verify rather than trust is really powerful in a kind of open source, sovereign iteration. But equally, it's the verification that's top down imposed on these, closed private garden kind of CBDCs, which is the problem, because in a sense, from a sovereign level, at that level, you do want to be trusted as an individual to take your own choices, but actually they want to verify all your actions and choices. So again, it's this interesting thing. There is the yin and yang, the two kind of diametrically opposed uses of that same paradigm. And so that just came to me that, trustless verification and a trust system is brilliant, when it's used and implemented in for what we want and what's healthy and what solves problems. But it also is the kind of extreme surveillance state aspect that, is what a lot of governments and states are looking to implement. So again, it has these elements in it, and we need to choose, which we've already chosen, but more people choose to go to where, the solution based and the positive side of it, and get educated, as you said, Jamie. I've been delighted to have this conversation and get your perspective. So it's been great.
Yeah.
Do your own research.
Yeah. Also, just closing thing, just something came up for me is like almost from the childhood playground. Like I remember one of the teachers saying, "Right, this one person spoiled it for everyone, and that no one is going to do it now because this one person is." It's like almost like our culture has become so pervasive for that now. It's like, okay, this person did that, so you're all going to suffer the consequences, and it's almost like that childhood approach is taken with things like this. Is like, we're going to take away the possibility of something going wrong because this one person might do it. I mean, it's funny enough you mentioned the loyalty scheme. Actually, I didn't get into it during the course of the main conversation, but when I was at uni, a friend of mine used to work for a major pizza chain, and they had a loyalty program, and they had these stickers. And before he left for the summer, once he left, he was working there in the summer. When he came back to uni, had an entire roll of these loyalty stickers. So he ate like free pizza for like months, but it wouldn't be possible in the trustless system because you wouldn't be able to steal someone's stickers. But again, like if that person being caught, like literally spoiled it for everyone.
Yeah.
Even though for the people who ate pizza for free, it was fun.
Yeah, literal human greed, Dan. Literally.
Yeah, like gluttony. Yeah,
in full effect.
Yeah, so good, really good conversation. Thank you both. So this is the Uncharted Territory podcast. If you're new to the show, please subscribe to our channel. We're currently available on YouTube. We're about to be launching on Rumble and Odyssey. If you prefer to listen, we're on all the major audio platforms, so do take a listen. And if you found this conversation interesting, please do share it with others. We're on a mission here to help raise awareness and education of everything that's happening in the changing world of finance, as well as this new emerging space around digital assets, Web3, blockchain, demystifying a lot of these topics and bringing new perspectives to help us all make those kind of informed choices for our own lives that we've talked about today. So thank you, Jamie, for being here. And thanks as always, Sam. As we touched upon during the course of this discussion, there is a number of ways that we can support you on your ongoing journey into the world of crypto, blockchain, and digital assets. We have the Navigating the Digital Assets course, which you can find at weareelevate.org/digital assets, where we give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of the emerging world of crypto and digital assets and give you an overview of the ecosystem so you can discover the tools that you need to get your money into crypto and out, and how to evaluate the different crypto assets that are emerging so you can make informed decisions. Now, irrespective of whether you actually are planning on investing in crypto, this will at least give you the baseline and foundational knowledge to understand this emerging world as it develops. Now, secondly, we also offer the Navigating the Financial Reset program, which is a monthly support program where we take a step further from that baseline understanding and actually give you the practical support and help that you need to enter the crypto ecosystem, to have your questions answered. And every single month, we meet twice virtually via Zoom. Firstly, to look at the broader economic landscape changes, the wider financial reset and the implications on our day-to-day lives and the decisions that we may need to make financially. And we also have a crypto cafe session where we explicitly look at the market developments within crypto and again provide the practical tools and support that you need to accelerate your own journey in that space. So to find out more about the Navigating the Financial Reset program, you can go to weareelevate.org/NFR. Every single month, we have 2 different workshops, and you'll be able to join us live on those sessions. And if you miss them, the great news is they're all pre-recorded and in the vault. So there's an entire library emerging of really great resources to support you on your journey. So if that's for you, do check it out. If not, we'll see you on the next episode of the Uncharted Territory podcast.